Welcome to Better Than We Found It, the podcast that goes inside the minds of the leaders building our future.
The difficult we do today, the impossible we do tomorrow.
I'm Josh Huggins, founder of GS2, a search firm dedicated to finding the visionaries powering the most critical shift of our time, the US energy transition.
So much of what I do is passion-driven because of those experiences.
This season, we're tracing the unique journeys of the architects of America's new energy landscape, exploring how their diverse backgrounds forged the psychology, the ambition, and the brutal truths required to lead in a time of unprecedented change.
If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to be a risk taker, and you got to be able to take calculated risks.
My mission is to uncover the playbook of the leaders in the arena, so that we can all learn what it takes to build a world that's truly better than we found it. Hello and welcome back to Better Than We Found It, the podcast where we talk to leaders and innovators building a more sustainable world. I'm your host, Josh Huggins, and today my guest's career is a powerful story of serendipity, purpose, and a huge amount of growth. Sohan is the Vice President of Renewable Energy at EVS, a consulting engineering firm at the heart of the energy transition. He's been in the solar industry for over 16 years, but his journey actually began in northeast India with an early passion for sustainable architecture. After moving to the US, he found his calling at EVS and was hired in 2014 to start their solar group of just 2 people. Today, he leads a division of over 200 professionals that has delivered designs for more than 28 gigawatts of solar power. And today we dig into that story. The leadership principles required to scale a team by 100x, the power of people-first culture in a high-pressure industry, and his vision for engineering a greener future. So if you want to understand how to build a career and a company with purpose, you're in the right place. So let's dive in. Sohan, welcome to Better Than We Found It.
Pleased to be here, Josh. Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's very good. Looking forward to the conversation, and we've got a lot to unpack. But for people who are listening, who perhaps haven't heard of you or your organisation before, would you mind just giving a quick introduction to who you are, your role at the organisation, and a quick overview of EVS?
Absolutely. So I'm Sohan Das, Vice President of Renewable Energy at EVS. We are a consulting engineering firm based out of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. About 230 people strong here. We do have another office in Denver, Colorado, and then remaining employees are remote across the country. We focus on utility scale, solar, battery storage, and we do a lot of substation and transmission work as well. Discipline-wise, we do electrical, civil, structural, geotech, land survey. My role in the organization is I oversee our client management and engineering operations here. Been in the company for 11 years, been in the solar industry for 16 years. When I joined EVS, I helped start our solar group and the whole energy side of the business here. And that's what we focus on right now. It's been a great ride for the last 11 years and building this group up and working with awesome clients across the country.
Wonderful. Well, lots to unpack, and excited to talk it all through. But for me, the fun starts back in the origin story in the early days. In our pre-call, you told me about your upbringing in northeast India, and I think the thing that resonated with me most was I think your father harvesting rainwater out of necessity rather than kind of a pure environmental practice. Thinking back to those times and seeing that and the impact it had on your family, how do you think that helped shape your view of the environment and also maybe, I suppose, long-term, your career?
Yeah. I think this is common knowledge, but working for a purpose is always good, right? Like it's just not about the purpose itself, but also it's just healthy, right? It's good for you. It's good for where you're working. So obviously I got lucky that I found a purpose earlier in my life, looking at my father. Growing up in India, I think probably there's even more opportunity to see what's going on in the environment around you, like with air pollution. We had problems with water, groundwater. So my father did a lot of rainwater harvesting. And then just also seeing a lot of urban development and air pollution increasing, it was quite evident for me growing up that we need to do something about it. And that helps when that molding happens when you're young. When you grow up, you're like, yeah, means I'd love to participate and do something about it. So it kind of just happened organically, and just seeing everything around me helped me shape who I am today.
Sure, understood. And when you go back to those times and that was happening, was that something that was that discussed, or was that just common practice for families in the area that you lived? That was something that was needed, or did you sort of talk about the significance of that in comparison to maybe how others in the Western world were living, or was that something that you were aware of, or how did that play?
I don't think it was discussed as much at community level. Means there were some discussions, in the government community level, but I think this was more just my dad doing his thing and me seeing it, and us talking about it within the family, right? And at that time we didn't have much solar, but there were solar water heaters and all that, and that was always cool to see. Okay, you can heat water through solar, so there's that concept out there, right? So there was those kind of things that were happening, but it was more just, I think, my dad's initiative that kind of helped me shape my direction as well.
Sure, understood. And then I think one of the other things that was really interesting to me was about the serendipity of a couple of the key moves that have happened to land you where you are today. Firstly, the pathway into architecture, and then the move to the US. So would you mind just sharing a bit about that story and how that came to be? And then we can get into maybe what those moves kind of tell us about you and your character. But how do they come about, firstly?
Yeah. So, we are very science, technology, engineering, math heavy growing up. And it's kind of common for a lot of families in India to really focus on hey, you need to, to be successful in life, try engineering or try to be a doctor or, one of the science professions. So I actually was applying for engineering schools at that time, and environment was always a part of my mind, but I thought I would go into engineering and do something for the environment later on. But my brother-in-law, he was a civil engineer, and he gave me the idea that, hey, have you ever considered doing architecture? And there's good opportunities out there. We could do some work together. We could, look at some cool energy efficient ways of designing buildings and all of that. So I got it was kind of the way it happens in India at that time was, you give an entrance exam, you clear that entrance exam, then you get a list of colleges to choose from. And, and it's subsidized. The government subsidizes if you do really good in your entrance exam. The fees are subsidized and all that. But I found a good school for architecture, and I thought I would give it a try. And my brother-in-law influenced that decision. And then when I got into architecture, I enjoyed it. I was better at engineering than the design subjects than some of my other classmates. So I was looked up as the guy to go to ask engineering questions. So I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I'm not an engineer either. And then we had some subjects on sustainability that also piqued my interest. And eventually I wanted to do masters in sustainability, and I found that opportunity here in the US. That's how this started.
Sure. But I think the route to the US was something that was prompted not by your brother-in-law, but by your sister. So what was that?
Yeah, it's again a lot of serendipitous things that happened, and I am here today. I think it's similar to a lot of other stories that I hear of other leaders as well. But my sister was preparing for her GRE exam, and she said she wanted to come to the US to for her master's degree, and she said I've got some materials you want to study, and I was like, okay, sure. And then we I shared study materials with her, and then when I gave my GRE exam, and it actually worked out, because when I started looking and I wanted to do some sustainability related masters, there was not any schools in India that was offering that, but there were only a few schools in the US that was offering that at that time. And so I applied to those schools, and I got in. My sister also happened to apply to a lot of schools, and we had one in common that we both got acceptance from. And my parents were like, "You have to go to that school. No, both of you are." So we ended up coming to the State University of New York in Buffalo. And yeah, I'm really happy I went there. It was a good school, very good professors, really good education, very affordable too. So it was a good decision for us.
And for those people listening who perhaps haven't had to make that sort of move to go to the type of school they want to, or for the opportunities, you might not be able to kind of comprehend that, and I certainly can't, from a position that I was in, from where I was born. But I suppose that's, at that stage in time of your life, it's a big leap to go from what locally to something the other side of the world. What do you think gave you that? I know it is a more common thing, but it gave you that ability to embrace that opportunity and to go for it, rather than perhaps feel as though staying local would be the better option for you.
Yeah. When I was graduating from my bachelor's degree, I thought that I would probably go to New Delhi and work in a big architectural firm and design some cool buildings, and hopefully they're sustainable. But since I did leave home when I was 17 to go to college, right? So I had already seen a lot of different culture in different part of India. Western part of India is quite different than eastern part of India. So I was not afraid to explore further. And the US sounded like a great option, and I came over. And again, it was not pre-planned, but it all worked out. But I've always been somewhat of a risk taker, adventurous. That's why I decided to join EVS as well and help start the solar group. And, I didn't know if it was going to be successful or not at that time, right? But it worked out.
Sure. So tell us about that journey then. So you study architecture, you come out. I know you had a couple of roles in design and kind of architecture, but then Safari Energy was, I think, the first role that you had in the energy industry. So how did you get to the point of realizing that actually energy was the industry you wanted to go on? And tell us about that sort of startup experience in a new sector.
Yeah. So when I graduated from my master's degree, it was peak recession. It was May of 2009 is when I graduated. Started looking for jobs in, larger architectural firms like Perkins and Wills, Skidmore, Owings, Merrill. And I wanted to do some, LEED gold, LEED platinum buildings, designing for them, but there was no opportunities out there. But yeah, luckily this company at that time, they used to be known as Just Energy. Then they rebranded as Safari Energy later on. So they were probably 5-6 people at that time. And they were looking to, they didn't have any engineering capabilities at that time. They were trying to hire somebody to help with some of the engineering capabilities. So I found that it was an internship, and I ended up joining. It was probably the best decision I made, because I had some background with AutoCAD, doing a lot of AutoCAD work in school and college, but then I also had done some energy modeling for buildings, more so, not so much solar. But I was able to figure out how to do PV watts and PV assist and all those energy modeling work. Safari Energy gave me that opportunity, and I was able to kind of help present a lot of our designs to real estate developers, but also working a lot with engineer of record. So hand over our 30% design to the engineer of record, and they would complete the design. They will create the stamp drawing sets, and I learned a lot from that process, just managing them and asking them questions, and so that was a great experience.
Sure. And I suppose it is quite a big leap of faith when you're moving to a new industry and you're joining a small organization where, I'm sure it's unlike maybe if someone joined EVS now with kind of structure and process and other things that are in place there. So learning how to operate in that environment where you have to roll your sleeves up and work hard and figure things out, I suppose, kind of been a bad thing for your onward career.
Yeah, no, it's it's not for everyone though. Because I still have great relationship with Matt Rudy and John Nordman, who are the two founders of Safari Energy, and we have spent a lot of late nights together. We used to, 1 p.m. we would go out, you know, getting the drawing sets ready to present to our clients next day, right? Like 1 a.m. Sorry, not 1 p.m. So we had, we had to do that for the first, couple of years, really bootstrapping stuff, and getting our first deal was such a big deal, right? So yeah, if somebody is looking for like a more stable, it's this startup is not the way to go, right? But it does give you. I am very lucky that I did that, and I always advise people, like, if you want to get somewhere in your career, like, do that when you are young, like before you have family and kids and all of that, and you have a lot more flexibility, right? And we also had fun, like, doing that work, but also living in New York City. It was a great experience and made a lot of friends. And yeah, so it was, for me, it was, again, a lot of, obviously I didn't plan any of that, but I obviously had, like, talking to my, friends and, cousins, and that's one thing that I heard, that if you work for a small organization and in an entrepreneur role, you'll get to learn, you'll wear a lot of hats, and you'll get to learn a lot. But, and so for me, that was a great experience.
Sure. And as you say, it isn't for everyone, but if you are younger and you can have a bit more tolerance to risk, you can really win. But also you can make decisions where maybe you don't you don't win, but you definitely learn. And I think the next role that you joined with Lanco, you kind of described that was the case with their ambitious plans in moving to the US, but it didn't quite work out for them in the market, and there was some tough times from it. When you look back at that now as a leader, what do you think some of those kind of the not, I suppose, the failures that you had, but just in terms of the organization failing and moving to a new market, what did that experience teach you about how to run a business, or sort of, I suppose, how to align your vision and making a viable business with the risks that you face, and what do you take forward from that?
Yeah. What I learned from that aspect, like, I think the team there was very solid. Like, the team that was put together was very solid. I still stay in touch with a lot of those people. And they were very, I guess it was just unfortunate, right? Because Lanco's, they had troubles back in India, not here in the US, not here in Europe. The problem stemmed from more like political environment and government changing, and then getting embroiled in some issues that eventually it almost took the company down, and they had to shut down their Europe offices and US offices. But I think the US office was a very successful venture that they did, because we developed a lot of projects and end up selling them to other developers for, I think, good, healthy profit. And there was one that I was very proud of. One was a 5 megawatt one project in US Virgin Islands, which at that time was still a very large project. Anything east of Mississippi, 5 megawatt was a big deal. We were also working on another 20 megawatt in Puerto Rico, which again at that time was unheard of. 20 megawatt east of Mississippi. Nobody was doing that big of a project. This is 2011, 2012 timeframe. So yeah, it was. But then we also worked a lot of other exciting projects near Indiana Airport, Nantucket Island. So we are like looking at a lot of cool projects. And I did want to expand my knowledge for large ground-mounted projects, which I did get an opportunity to do that at Lanco. So overall, that was a great experience too.
Sure. And then I think you described it as you sort of found your calling when the opportunity presented itself at EVS. What was it that really stood out to you from the moment you first met them that has transpired in such a great journey for you? And yeah, what were the sort of the kind of the characteristics, the behaviors, the things that you saw that made you believe that this was the right place for you?
Yeah, it's really the culture, the ambition, the culture, and the focus on people was very important to me. And when I talked to Dennis and Andy, they're the two owners of EVS, it was very clear that the organization cared very deeply about people, and also very deeply about customer service and clients, and about renewable energy as well. So what I was actually missing in a lot of other jobs is that, and I tell a lot of people who are engineers, especially, like, if you want to learn, like as an engineer, like you should work for an engineering organization. Like that's where you get to learn the most. And also, like, an engineering organization, a consulting engineering firm invests in their engineers to learn, because this is our bread and butter. If our engineers are not absolutely top of the line in the whole industry, like, we can't compete, right? So it's in our best interest to give the training and coaching to our engineers. So that was like very clear to me, because at the end of the day, I was doing engineering, and I was like, well, this will be, the people focus are so clear, because we are, at the end of the day, our people make money for us, right? So they are the ones who are delivering projects and products, and we need to take care of them, and we need to invest in them. And that really resonated with me, because at other organizations, a lot of times engineering is kind of the backroom staff, right, to some extent. And they're like, finance people are getting the deals done, or there's construction people, that's the focus of a construction group, focus of a development group. And the engineering group, the engineers are the core of the business, which really resonated with me as well.
Sure. So when you first joined the organization, am I right in saying that EVS was to start the solar group, or it had just started?
It was kind of, some of those discussions were happening with some other clients before my time as well, where we had some connections through the wind side, some large EPCs that Dennis and Andy knew. But I was the first person who joined who was focused purely on solar. The rest of the organization basically was doing a lot of civil engineering work for the military, for commercial. Like, we did the Viking Stadium design, so we are doing some really big work here at EBS. Small company, but doing some really, really, really cool work, but non-solar at the time. But Dennis's vision was, he's the kind of our classical visionary. He looked at industries that we could grow with, but also have a very strong purpose, and solar resonated with him. We were dabbling with wind, but we never ended up doing a lot of wind. But those relationships did come quite handy when we started looking into solar. And the feedback we got is that, you are a good civil engineering organization, but you need to bring in electrical to be successful as a consulting engineer. So we did both. We brought in, we had a civil group, and we, had a few people come over from the civil group and helped us. And then we grew our electrical team. Eventually, we added structural, geotech, land survey. Land survey we always used to do, but then we added structural, geotech, substation, transmission, SCADA, all of that, and became a one-stop shop.
Sure, understood. And you mentioned there you were the sort of first one in solar, and now I think you mentioned the organization is it exclusively focusing on renewable energy?
Yeah, so we are exclusively focused on the energy sector. Majority of it is the renewable energy, and we do some substation transmission work, which sometimes might not be renewable energy exactly. We did a substation design work for a data center that was just purely powering that, for that data center itself. So, but yeah, majority of our work is in renewable energy.
Sure. So from joining, this being the first one, boots on the ground in solar, to now this organization where over 200 people are majority of their time focusing on the industry, what would you say is the brutal truth that or the thing that it takes to be able to grow an organization at that scale, in the pace that you have, and maybe what things perhaps did you think you needed to do, but actually you had to abandon them along the way?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that you need is the desire and passion, right? To for the industry, to grow a group, have the ambition, like you want to grow beyond a certain size, like also to keep our clients happy and to give opportunities to our people, right? So, but you need to aim higher every year, right? So push yourself to do more and more, and then also make sure you have that focus on people. At the end of the day, consulting business is all about people, like keeping your people happy, keeping your clients happy. You have to have that balance, right? So that's what is really needed, the desire and passion to get that done. And then what was your other question?
Was there a sort of belief or an understanding of what you thought you should do in scaling that actually you had to step away from or abandon on the journey because it wasn't actually delivering the success you thought it may?
Yeah. There's a few things that we have done along the way, and we are like, yeah, this is not really for us. Like one time we tried to help some of our clients become a battery integrator. And we got deep into it, which actually ended up being a great thing in hindsight, because we developed a lot of knowledge how to get batteries UL certified and all that, and fire protection, and just how a battery container works, that engineering inside of it. But we realized that that's not really our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is doing consulting engineering for utility scale. So we tried that for some time and then ended up saying, like, this is not really who we are. So let's focus on what we do well. There's definitely other stories like that. We had started looking into green hydrogen at one point, but it didn't really pan out. And that's the industry itself, not us. But who knows? Hopefully, it might have a comeback in the future. But right now, it seems like a good decision. We didn't dive into it head first, right? So
sure,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely things that we had considered and not really pan out.
Understood. Yeah. And one of the areas that I think stood out to me from your profile and kind of looking at the progression that you've had is that it felt like quite a big jump from where you were before you joined to join and be director, that director title very early on, or I think it was straight away. Maybe when you may not have even felt that you were ready for that. What do you think it is that Andy and Dennis, your founders, sort of saw in you or understood about you that allowed you to be successful, and also, I suppose, your own doubt in your mind? How do you put it to the back of your mind to deliver to the level that they then kind of needed you to?
Yeah, I don't know. You might have to ask them, but maybe it's the desire and passion that they saw in me, like for renewable energy, for solar, for building something from scratch. I think they saw that. And obviously I had to work a lot on my own leadership skills. I had never built up a team like this, right? So I had to learn all of that on the job, and they supported me throughout. So I think they believe that they can help me with those things. But obviously I had the solar industry knowledge and the PV design knowledge that was very valuable. But then I think it was probably the desire and passion that they saw in me that to grow the group that they decided to hire me at that time.
Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned the sort of visionary nature of them as leaders and founders, and I think that's very much the case that we see in organizations who are looking to scale from their recruitment perspective. They have to be able to make those judgment calls on people who aren't quite ready for the role or will be taking a stretch to be in the role that they need them to, and to drive them forward. So when you now look at your organization as the leader, and I'm sure you've hired hundreds of people now to do so, what is it that you look for? What's the potential that you would say, or how do you categorize the types of things that you look out for people when they're stepping into new roles, or perhaps they don't have the full experience, but you really believe in them? How do you assess that?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what role we are hiring for, right? Like, there's some very technical roles that we purely just look from a technical perspective. Can this person do the work? Do they have the knowledge? Then we have people who we might expect them to do client-facing roles. So then we look at how their communication is, like how, do they understand the big picture of like how to deal with a client? There will always be tricky situations when you're negotiating something and it won't be a comfortable discussion. So through our interviews, we try to figure out if that person is well suited for it, or if they can be trained to do that in the future. And then there's the people management aspect. And that, obviously requires a different level of maturity of kind of guiding others through their career and through their career progression, right? So we have put in a lot of effort. Even more recently, our HR team helps a lot with that too, in kind of developing people, the people management aspect. So that's been a pretty a pretty cool experience. But yeah, we do have to sometimes put people in a little uncomfortable situation that they might not be ready for, have them stretch a little bit, but provide them coaching and guiding throughout the process. And if they're not able to do that, we try to put them in a position where they can be successful still here at UBS.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Appreciate kind of, we talk about it with our clients around kind of betting on talent and, taking that judgment call that somebody is going to make it. And of course, there's lots of examples where people do, but unfortunately, there are others where perhaps people can't quite meet the desired needs that are there. How do you do that in the best way to still retain that, is still a high potential, high performing individual, but perhaps that was just a step too far? How do you manage that aspect when it perhaps hasn't quite worked out?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've learned a lot through the years. Like I have made a lot of hiring mistakes, more than I would have liked to. So, but in some cases, somebody had the technical talent, but we kind of put them in a position where, they're managing clients as well, and they're not good at managing clients, right? So it didn't work out really well. So there's those things that have happened. So now we know better. And as a larger organization now, we have a little more flexibility that, as a smaller organization, we had to hire somebody who was talented in engineering, but then it would be really nice if they can manage the client and if they can mentor people. And we quickly realized that not everybody can do that, right? So now we really try our best to put them in positions where they can actually be successful.
For sure. Yeah, I get that. And I see that a lot, but as you've proven, if you don't make those bets on talent, because sometimes you can do that, I suppose, and, you make a mistake and then it makes you second guess the next time you're doing it. But there's so much benefit that can be had when you grow your own talent and you progress people and develop them through. It's something that's a big hallmark of businesses that I've grown. You always find the loyalty and the commitment comes when you give people those opportunities rather than hiring them in. And, but it's about getting that balance right, I suppose, when you're scaling at the level that you have. So in terms of, in markets, you mentioned there about a couple of things where perhaps they didn't quite go to plan. Wait, as a leader now, and you're looking at the kind of the US energy transition, particularly with the headwinds that it's currently facing. How do you assess the market and the different growth areas that there are when the political landscape can change so quickly that can make things difficult to understand, where that's going to be? What's the approach that you and the leadership team that you have take on that? And how do you look forward?
Yeah, so I'm actually a big believer in diversification. So it's never a great idea to put all eggs in the one basket. So that's one of the reasons why the two reasons. One is diversification. There's another one that we just saw the need from the clients, but we got into the substation market early in 2021. And now we've executed more than 15 projects that are already, constructed and operating. But that was a diversification strategy. Means we are doing substations in areas where it's a substation just for the EV charging infrastructure, right? So it doesn't have to be tied to solar or battery storage. So our strategic planning session is coming up soon. So we'll be talking further about, solar is, I don't think solar will fall off a cliff because of the big, beautiful bill. But, there's definitely some slowdown to be expected. And we probably won't see that hockey stick curve that we have been seeing for the last 10 years, right? So if we want to grow at the speed that we have been growing, we should be looking at some other markets. So that's something we will be doing during our strategic planning sessions. And there's a lot of opportunities that are out there. That is, the skills that we already have will be really well suited to do that work. So something that we'll be working on.
Sure. Yeah. And as you said, when you moved from what you were doing into solar, there was those transferable skills. I think, from our side, we're certainly seeing, a huge amount around the kind of integration of, and co-location of storage, in these projects is a huge area that a lot of our clients are looking at. The transmission being upgraded, data center connection, but it sounds like you're already doing some of that. That these are big areas and opportunities in the wider ecosystem that could transfer from where you are. So I think it sounds like the future is bright for EVS, and you've got a lot to go forward for. But I suppose there are people and companies I talk to who do see this as, extremely complex challenges and a bit of an uphill battle. What is it about the sector for you that gives you hope and optimism about, the industry around renewables, despite the potential, headwinds of the administration, that make you believe this is the right place to be?
Yeah, no, I think overall we're a very resilient organization, not resilient industry, and also very creative industry. And I think the people in the industry are very passionate, right? So they want to make it work there. Everybody's trying to, I don't actually see many people jumping ship. Like all of a sudden the new bill passed and they're like, well, okay, that solar is not going to do great, so I'm going to go to a different industry. Like I don't see too many of, I can actually say in other industries I've seen that happen, but I've not seen that happen in the solar industry as much. So obviously we need to be even more competitive now with pricing and all of that. But then again, I think even within the century, this is a time when the power demand is increasing. The best way to put more power in the grid is using solar, battery storage, wind, renewable sources. And that's the fastest way to get it done. So at some point, the rubber hits the road when we start seeing these energy demand really skyrocket. And you have to also look at price, right? Even without subsidies, solar is very competitive. So we have to keep building more solar. But then I'm also very excited to see like what other long duration battery storage solutions will actually become more mainstream. Like lithium ion obviously was trying to do that in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, but really took off after COVID, where the prices really started plummeting. And then now I think battery storage tax credits are good until 2033. So I think we'll still see a lot of build out of storage. So I'm sure we'll find out, the industry will figure out solutions that are, obviously in addition to solar, battery storage, wind, other solutions as well that will be cheap and scalable.
For sure, yeah, and that's the key thing that I always come back to is the scale. It needs to be scalable because the demand is there, and therefore we have to be able to fulfill it. And so I'm very positive about the industry, and that's why we recruit within it, because we believe there's growth, big growth coming, despite anything else. I want to just circle back a bit to leadership though, because I didn't follow up on a few areas that I think is quite crucial for people who are in these sort of roles where they are rapidly scaling and growing teams within their organization. One of the things that I regularly hear is, early leaders actually moving away from the execution of the work to leading people who are executing the work is a challenge. But an even bigger challenge is when you then start having to lead the leaders of the people that are executing. So that second tier leadership. Could you tell me a bit about that transition for you, where you had to start leading leaders, and maybe some advice or guidance that you got from your leaders, Andy and Dennis, or others? And how do you start to build those leadership capabilities rather than being able to see and, I suppose, sort of dictate what's going on because you're only one layer removed?
Yeah. I think that particular transition is one of the hardest. Is, obviously you're an individual contributor. If you're good at your trade, you'll do good. And then leading people, that's definitely a hard transition because you have to delegate a lot. But I think the hardest transition is leading leaders. And that really takes a whole different set of skills. And, I lean a lot on my mentors and, Andy and, others that I work with, read a lot of books and podcasts to help with some of those leadership aspects. But you have to really kind of start thinking about, one of the leaders is not, one of the engineers is not performing well or are not communicating well or having a difficult time. Then is their leader, it could be the director or the senior project manager, are they coaching them well enough for their behavior to improve, right? So and it's easy to kind of think about like, oh yeah, this project manager, is not a good people manager, or this, or not a good client manager. But then you have to ask the question, well, is their leader coaching them properly? Then you have to basically then tell their leader like, hey, maybe it's on you, because you have to coach them how to behave better in this situation or how to handle this situation better. So you have to, it's easy to just think like, yeah, that's that person, right? Like he's difficult with clients or, whatever it is, right? But then you have to see like, okay, maybe we can help them, right? And that should come from their manager, right? So you have to constantly change, like keep evaluating your mindset when you're a leader of leaders.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, and I think that's one of the toughest places for sure to drive forward to, but also can be so can be so empowering when you've realized you've got it right, and actually take it to that next level. And I think some of that comes from, the vision and mission and that people first culture, because you lead the way with your behaviors, which show others how to do that. And that's something that I think is crucial, and sounds like is the case within EVS being so people focused. It makes it easier to lead because you have that but behind you. So in terms of the future for the organization, just to finish off this segment, where do you see EVS going? Not necessarily in terms of the sectors as we've discussed, but over the coming years, what's the plan for the organization around diversification or growth or consolidation? Where are you going as a business?
Yeah, obviously we'll keep doing a lot of solar, battery storage, substation and transmission specifically are very exciting markets for us that will continue growing. We are looking at other markets like distribution, data centers. What can we do with that? So we'll be looking at a lot of other markets and see which one makes sense for us to put a lot of time and energy and effort into. But yeah, it's definitely exciting times for us. The market is very dynamic and constantly changing. So that's the world, right? The world keeps changing faster than ever, right? So we have to adjust and make sure like we stay on top of it. Means we can dive into a lot of things. Like we can do power studies for nuclear. We can do a lot of things as engineers, but we have to just pick and choose where we want to be successful and what will make the most sense for the organization. So yeah, that's something again we'll be discussing in the next few months with the leaders.
Understood. Good. Well, look. So moving on, I've got a few quick fire questions I'd like to throw at you before we wrap everything up. So, you mentioned you read books and listen to podcasts. So, happy to take a book or a podcast. But what would be one book or podcast that you believe every leader should listen to or read?
It's difficult to say every leader. Actually, one book that every leader should read, especially if you're leading people, is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's definitely a good one for all leaders, or just in general if you're working with people, right? That's a good book to read. One I would recommend for renewable energy leaders who are like looking into the future, a podcast is Catalyst by Shale Khan. I really like the content they have on that platform, and Shale is very knowledgeable and brings in really cool guests to talk about the future of energy. Otherwise your podcast, I think that'll be a really good one for people to listen to, all the leaders, especially you bring in a lot of good leaders to talk.
Sure.
But yeah, as far as book and podcast, that book is a classic one. And for my podcast, Catalyst is one of my favorites.
Brilliant. I haven't listened to it, so I have to check it out. It sounds fascinating. So if you were to describe the culture at EVS in one sentence, how would you do it?
Well, we have our core values, that is respect, humility, and integrity. And so that is really a good way to describe EVS. But another, soft core value that we have that Dennis talks a lot about is fun. But fun doesn't just mean like we have ping pong tables and an indoor pickleball court, which is really cool, but it's really about like enjoying working with your coworkers, enjoying working with your clients, having a passion and purpose for your work, right? So that's the deeper meaning of fun that we really believe in. So I think that does describe us really well.
For sure. And you spend so much of your time at work. And most people, I think, particularly in the renewable and new energy sector, are passionate about what they do. But there's passion for what you do, and then there's passion for people you work with. If you bring that together, then having fun, having a smile on your face, you're going to be doing your best work. So I completely resonate with that. Who would be the leader that you most admire?
There's so many of them. On a global level, Mahatma Gandhi is, I grew up in India, and, the one of the really interesting things I learned about him was he's the greatest entrepreneur in the world that nobody knows about, because he brought in an idea, which is basically getting freedom through nonviolence. That had never been done in the world ever, right? It was a novel idea at that time, but how do you get at that time, maybe people, not a billion, but 600 million people to align with your idea that we will free the country without violence, because anything before that was always done through violence, right? So he's probably the greatest entrepreneur nobody has ever heard about. He made it happen. So that's on a global scale. That's very inspiring.
Sure. And, doing these things without the technology that we rely on so heavily to cascade messages and other things and bring people on that journey. They ended up
inspiring two other great leaders, Nelson Mandela and, Martin Luther King Jr., right? So, and they did that in their respective countries.
Exactly.
So,
I'm going to come on to that. And what would you say is the most underestimated trait of a successful leader?
I think the art of listening and art of asking the right questions. Something I'm also trying to develop, get better at, right? Asking the right critical questions, right questions to your internal people, to your clients, to your even to your leaders. I think between these two, it's a close battle, but maybe listening will take the cake here. Just like deep listening.
Sure, I agree. But I suppose you have to ask the right questions to be able to listen to the thing that can then help them the most. But they're entwined, aren't they? But definitely asking the right questions, listening, and then using that to almost sort of allow your team member to self-coach themselves. I think one of the things I know I'm not so good at is thinking I know the answer to their problem and giving it to them rather than allowing them the chance to go through that process themselves. And that's where you can really see people getting it, is when you ask them the question and they figure it out themselves. So I get that for sure. You speak about fun. What would you say is the most favorite part of your job today?
Favorite part of my job is really, helping, my direct reports, directors, and, others be successful at EVS, helping them get to the point where they want to be in their careers. Seeing our clients happy, hearing that we are their preferred engineers, we are the best of the best in the industry. That really gives me when they give us a good shout out, not just for quality of work, but for also the, that we listen and we take feedback well and give that back to us, that we are doing a good job. That really makes my day at times. But other than that, were you also asking about hobbies or just?
No, just that part, but we can definitely come on to that. And if you weren't in energy, though, and you're not allowed to say architecture, what would you be doing?
If I was not in energy, there are two things I could have been doing. One is being an astronaut. I'm just always fascinated by space, and I know my wife won't like it if I got in a spaceship, but just being involved in if I was working for NASA and just involved in learning more about the space, that would be so cool. Another one that I actually wanted to do at one point was be in the army, but I couldn't do that because of some health issues that came up. But at one point I was like, when I was in India growing up, I was like, one of my paternal uncles was a very decorated soldier, and he did really, well in his career as well. And he really influenced me. But I could have been a different story if it were not because of my eye. There was a big accident I had, and couldn't make it to the army. But I think it worked out well.
I was going to say, I think it definitely did work out well.
Yeah.
What would you say is the best piece of advice that you've ever received in your career?
Actually, I remember a brother-in-law talking to him before I took up the EVS job, and he encouraged me to take that risk. And it was like, you still have time, like you still have age on your side, where you take this risk. If it doesn't work out, you'll be, you can, go and be an individual contributor somewhere else, but you're getting a chance to be a leader, build a group, do it, right? This, at that time I was married, but we didn't have kids. And I think that was a great advice I got from him at that time.
For sure. Is that the same brother-in-law that advised you around the...
Different one.
Oh, different.
Yeah.
Okay. You got a good family around you. Lots of good people giving you advice, which is great.
I do. Yeah.
And lastly, what's one thing that you do consciously to keep your team motivated?
Actually, this is interesting. It's obviously giving people positive feedback, positive reinforcement when they do something good, but also the constructive feedback, because they need it. And at that time, it does. When you are giving that feedback, it feels uncomfortable. But in the long run, people who really want to improve really appreciate it. And I've seen that. So that's what I'm trying to do even better, of, balancing both the constructive and the positive feedback.
For sure. Yeah. I'm talking about books and podcasts. I'm listening to The Hard Thing About Hard Things, which is a fascinating book by a tech entrepreneur and CEO. But that's something he talks about a lot. It's not shying away from those tough conversations, and that it's actually doing your team a disservice not to give them the feedback, because it's holding them back, and it's ultimately you're making your job more difficult. So for that, difficult 20-minute conversation, the benefits for everybody is so much. So not to shy away from them. So I think that's a great thing to do. So thank you for that. So to finish with, Sohan, as you know from the podcast, it's called Better Than We Found It. It's around your own personal legacy. So you've already obviously achieved so much, throughout your career, and particularly with EVS. But when you do get to that point where you're at the end of your career and you can look back at the impact that you've had, what is your personal ambition? What would make you feel proud when you look back and say, I definitely left that better than I found it?
Yeah. Helping the world become a better place, right? Obviously, we are doing renewable energy work, and that I strongly believe is the right thing for the world. But then also just after joining EVS, when I saw like we can impact people's careers so nicely, like they are building up their family and they're having a good job, they're enjoying, that is a huge thing. Like we are impacting the life of 230 families now, right? So and that's incredible. And so there's nothing better than these two things, right? Like you're doing renewable energy work and helping the world, but you're also supporting the livelihood of these many families and, giving them a good life. And so I'd like to continue building on both of these aspects and see how far we can go. But I think the sky is the limit.
For sure. Absolutely. And I think that's where the power of this sector comes to fruition. It's that sustainable value creation. We're creating value through something that's for good. And then we can use that value to not only, create monetary value for shareholders of a business, but also value for employees, for the wider economy, and also for the wider communities. And when those things all come together, I think that's when great things really happen. So I've no doubt you're going to continue on that journey and to continue to do work very well. Thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your career and your journey and some of those leadership tips. They've been really insightful. If people are interested to hear more about EVS or learn more about you, are you happy for them to reach out? And if they were to, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn, so that's always a good place to reach out. Although I might not be able to respond to all messages, but if somebody sends me a friend request, if I don't think they're a fake person, I usually accept it. Sometimes it seems like it's coming from a random source and it might not make any sense. Then I won't accept it. But I'm always happy to connect with anybody in the industry and just help each other out. So LinkedIn would be a good place to connect.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Well, look, thank you so much for that. And we'll have to check in again soon, but appreciate your time. Best of luck with the upcoming strategy and where you're going to take it. And I've no doubt continued success for you and for EVS. So we'll catch up soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate the opportunity.
Sohan's story is a powerful reminder that a successful career isn't always a meticulously planned blueprint, but sometimes it's about having the courage to follow serendipitous moments and finding a home in a culture that really aligns with your values. And I think what stands out to me is his unwavering belief in that people first philosophy that he spoke about as the ultimate driver of success. In an industry which can be measured in megawatts and financial metrics, he scaled a huge organization by focusing on a simple truth that if you take care of your people and your clients, the success will follow. And I think that kind of mindset around servant leadership proves to be one of the most critical infrastructure you can build around the trust in your team. When you identify the talent, you foster a great culture and you empower those people, I think that's the ultimate test of leadership and how you can truly leave an industry better than you found it. Thanks so much for listening. To learn more about Sohan's work, you can find him on LinkedIn. And if today's conversation resonated with you, then please share this episode with a friend or a colleague, as it's the best way to support the show. So until next time, take care and thank you very much. Thank you for listening to Better Than We Found It. These conversations are a powerful reminder that while emerging technology is crucial, having leaders with the conviction and resilience to see it through is the only way we will deliver what is required. This podcast is powered by GS2, where our mission is to build the leadership teams that are shaping the future. I'm your host, Josh Huggins, and the conversation doesn't need to end here. Please connect with me on LinkedIn to continue the discussion. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show so you never miss what's next. And until next time, let's all work to leave our world a little better than we found it.